Welcome, everyone. My name is Helen Lansdowne. I'm the Associate Director at the Center for Asia Pacific Initiatives, one of the three sponsors of this Idea Fest lecture that we have today with Dr. Robert Bedeski. Global Studies, the Center for Global Studies, Kathy, and Political Science Department got together and decided that we would love to host Dr. Bedeski back on campus. Bob is a professor emeritus and an adjunct professor with the Department of Political Science, where he taught for many years at UVic. And a little bit of a bio before we begin the lecture. Dr. Bedeski earned both his master's in Asian Studies and PhD in Political Science from University of California, Berkeley. And he was, I didn't know this, was the first non-Japanese research fellow at the National Institute for Defense Studies in Tokyo in 1980 to 1981. Currently, Bob is an honorary professor at UBC, a member of the board of directors of the Asia Pacific Foundation of Canada, an affiliate professor at the Jackson School of International Studies, University of Washington, research scholar, Institute for Security and Development Policy, Stockholm, and the best one, I think, the honorary Kentucky Colonel. I love that. I read that today. I thought, great. In 2008, he received an honorary doctorate from the Mongolian Academy of Sciences and was the visiting Aung San Suu Kyi Endowed Chair in Asian Democracy at the University of Louisville, Kentucky. He has a new book that you can get from Routledge, the publisher, or on Amazon, Human Security and the Chinese State, Historical Transformations and the Modern Quest for Sovereignty. And he's busy working on his next book, The Asiatic State, Mongol Legacy and Transformation, introducing the anthropocentric theory of human security, and that will be published shortly by the University of Kentucky Press. So without further ado, please welcome Dr. Bob Bedeski.
Thank you very much, Helen, and I'd like to express my appreciation to Political Science, Kathy, and Global Studies for facilitating this visit. I'd like to start with a little background. I'll be dabbling both in history and in political science as I go through this today. In the 1970s, the social sciences rediscovered the concept of the state and applied it to a wide range of political change that had been previously labeled as emerging from society. However, there was a tendency to frame nation-states as semi-autonomous actors having common characteristics and to overlook the historical particularities that differentiate these various states. A couple of decades later, the notion of human security was formulated as policy perspective, focusing on individuals rather than the state, which has at times come to be a major threat to its population's rights and welfare, or has been incapable of serving as the protector of its people, to paraphrase Lloyd Axworthy, former Minister of Foreign Affairs. Flaws of this human security approach have been noted, including ambitious diffuseness. In fact, is there anything that does not have human security implications, was one of the main critiques. Myself, I see the design flaw as its state centrism, the assumption that initiation and refinement of state activity, even when working through transnational organizations, will be adequate to achieve the expressed goals of freedom from want and freedom from fear. Counterparts. Chinghis Khan was a central figure in the history of Asian state making, and he founded the largest empire in history. Connecting his life narrative with creation of the Mongol state is a descriptive task which has been accomplished by various scholars. And so I won't try to second guess them. The challenge I seek is to go beyond historical phenomena and to analyze his rise as illustrative of a conceptual matrix which differs radically from American and Western European assumptions about political development and state building. To accomplish this, I consider security as protection of individual life to be the point of departure, focusing on the life of Chinghis. Trying to understand how he lived a relatively long life despite the hardships of the steppe and constant war. This combination of vulnerability and strength create not only a fascinating chronicle, but present an opportunity to explore the meaning of security. That is the protection of life, which affords safety and well-being to ensure longevity. Also, individual security is the primary justification for the existence of any state. It was a condition that was very weak in medieval Central Asia, with daily hardships that few moderns could have survived. By examining his perilous life, we can identify the elements which allowed Chinghis to postpone death and build an empire. And finally, with identification of some security variables, I will outline a theory of anthropocentric security which may have universal validity. Just a quote from Chinghis, or attributed to him, that expresses his need to learn. If there's anything that is significant about his life besides the killing and the raping and the destruction, it's the fact that he was an avid learner, a student of human nature and of prudent judgments about people. This is a map of the empire founded by Chinghis Khan. It began up here in the eastern part of present-day Mongolia, and his armies spread as far as the Caspian Sea, first uniting the tribes very forcibly in some cases, sometimes by alliance in Mongolia proper, incorporating other tribes, assimilating other peoples, providing the foundation for the assimilation of the entire Song Empire that was completed by Kublai Khan, and spreading into Asia as far as the shores of the Baltic and the Adriatic. So it was a huge empire. Did not penetrate into India, only briefly into Southeast Asia. Under his successors, the empires expanded even further, including Korea. There were 2 maritime attacks on Japan, both failed because of fortuitous typhoons. But here we can see the extent of this empire. But this juggernaut, just to complete this picture, this juggernaut did not end with the Mongol Empire. A descendant of Chinghis Khan, Babur, was able to conquer India, establish the Mughal Empire. Tamerlane, Timur the Lame, came out of Samarkand. His wife was a descendant of Chinghis. And even Boris Godunov, he's the founder of the Romanov dynasty in Russia, was a Chinghisid, or a descendant, or claimed descendancy from Chinghis Khan. This inquiry that I'm pursuing is part of a continuing personal project I began over 2 decades ago. Here's a counter quote from Chinghis Khan, where he outlines his chief pleasures. This project began at a time when the Cold War was ending, and the prospects for a more peaceful world, in our world, seemed to have profoundly improved with the ending of the Cold War, as I mentioned. For a few years, globalization and human security eclipsed the anxieties of nuclear holocaust and arms races. Few promises of that time obviously have been kept or fulfilled, but my interest in East Asia comparative politics and security converged when I had the opportunity to visit Mongolia for the first time in 1994. My research and writing on East Asian states stimulated me to learn more about Chinghis Khan, the founder of that state. His life narrative also seems to be a test case for some ideas I developed around security. Let's turn to the historical narrative of Chinghis Khan. The steppes and the forests of Central Asia were dominated by nomadic tribes who had adapted to the harsh environment through herding and horsemanship and archery. Absent a central power, tribal war and vendetta were common means of settling disputes. Justice meant vengeance. Security against enemies was sought through fierceness and alliance. Unlike the sedentary agro-urban civilizations of the more populated southern regions, the rapacious Tatars and warlike Merkits often plundered the tribes of eastern Mongolia. In addition, fragments of the Tang Empire of China manipulated tribes to prevent anyone becoming a threat to the Xisha or the Jin or the Tanguts. The successors to the Chinese Empire and throughout the Chinese Empire pursued a policy of yi, that is, use the barbarians to control the barbarians. So they would play one off against another. The tribal chief Yesuge captured the young wife of a Merkit by the name of Hirdin and made her his own. He fathered Temujin, who was born around 1165. Yesuge's ancestry and tribal position placed him and his children among the steppe aristocracy. His defeat of Tatars and his wife napping from the Merkit marked him and his line for future revenge. Steppe males were taught the skills and knowledge needed for survival, including horsemanship, hunting, archery, herding, wrestling, and tribal history. Yesuge took a second wife and had a total of 6 sons and 1 daughter. When Temujin was around 10, his father took him to the Ungarat tribe to seek a bride. He was betrothed to Birte, and this had a further benefit by establishing an alliance that was cemented by a dowry of a fine sable coat, which comes into play a little later. Temujin was left with his fiance's tribe to learn their ways, and on the way home, his father Yesuge was poisoned by a band of Tatars, and he died at home. Temujin returned to his birth clan, where a new leader had emerged. And the widows and children of Yesuge were abandoned to survive on their own. The clan left them to fend for themselves. During this tenuous existence of exile, Temujin, aided by his brother Kasar, killed his half-brother Bektir. During his youth, he also made a blood pact called Anda with Jamuka, who became his ally in war and later his rival in a fight to the death for supremacy over the Mongols. The bride of Temujin, Birte, was captured and held by the Merkit, that is the same people that his mother had come from, until she was rescued by a joint attack by Temujin, Jamuka, and Togrul, who had been his patron and his father's Anda. Togrul became the patron of Temujin when Temujin gave Togrul the fine sable coat, and this gift cemented that relationship. But it meant that Temujin was a vassal of this man. In battle after battle over the next 20 years, Chinghis Khan, or I should say Temujin, was exposed to danger. Sometimes he was victorious, occasionally defeated, and he was seriously wounded at least twice. Several of the wars were fought to right old wrongs or in revenge for past insults, or to acquire herds, slaves, and horses due to depletion by war and declining climate conditions. In 1201, his Anda Jamuka was elected Khan of a tribal confederation, and he led an attack against Temujin and Togrul. Temujin's victories over the Naiman and the Tayuchut also led to the formation of a coalition against him. Togrul, who had been given a position of Wang Khan by the Chinese, sought to rid himself of his ambitious vassal, Temujin. And in 1202, Temujin exterminated the Tatars near the Kalka River. He broke with Togrul, who defeated Temujin at the Battle of Kalakalji. He and his band of followers, or komitatus, withdrew to Baljuna, where he and his band of brothers, according to legend, drank dirty water and they swore the Baljuna covenant. Nonetheless, he linked up again with Togrul to exterminate the Karite tribe and then exterminate the Naimans. Temujin gave rewards to supporting tribes and individuals. He delivered destruction or enslavement to those who resisted. From 1202 through 1204, he fought major battles and won victories against the tribes allied with and led by Togrul and Jamuka. He was crowned by election as Great Khan at the Kurultai of 1206, and at this time took the name of Chinghis Khan. He set out to create a new Mongol state with two main aims. First, reduction of tribal chieftain power, and secondly, to create a core military to carry out his policies. His military reorganization affected the social structure of the Mongol nation. Men were assigned to particular military units and could not leave under pain of death and punishment for their commanders. Families were responsible for providing military equipment and were subordinate to the unit's military commander. The Mongols were united into a centrally commanded militarized society and state, which was ruled by a new military aristocracy that had been personally created by Chinggis Khan. His bodyguard became an instrument of power, and his main bodyguard consisted of 1,000 warriors. Many of them were sons of generals who were basically held as hostage for the good behavior of their fathers, but also as a training and selection process to see who had military and political abilities. So his bodyguard became an instrument of power from which the administrative cadres of the empire were later selected. The years between 1204 and 1209, this was the only period when he devoted himself to organizational matters, and he created the structure of his empire and consolidated the power of the ruling family. In the same year, the Uyghurs became the first people outside the Mongol nation to acknowledge the suzerainty of Chinggis Khan. His armies attacked the Jin Empire in North China and captured Beijing, or Zhengdu, as it was named at the time. He also won wars against the Sultanate of Khwarazm, which was in today's Uzbekistan and Turkmenistan. Chinggis died in August of 1227 while his armies were fighting and defeating the Shisha, or the Western Shah kingdom. Much of modern history has been dominated by maritime empires from the 16th century onward, eclipsing the continental exclusivism of previous times. Chinggis Khan was pivotal in demarcating the ancient world from the modern, spanning much of Asia and Russia. Its retreat, the retreat of the Mongol Empire, left a power vacuum to be occupied by Ottomans, Romanovs, and Mings, as well as others. The bubonic plague, Central Asian fragmentation, and discovery of the New World demoted much of Eurasian inner space from a terrorizing heart of darkness into the exotic obscurity that it enjoys today. Okay, turning to politics. What is security? Chinghis Khan was pater familias of the Mongol people. He was founder of the Mongol state and conqueror of an Asiatic empire. His career was highly improbable, given the low prospect of survival to old age on the steppes. To the extent that scholars have reconstructed his narrative, evidence demonstrates that he was an individual who endured the unforgiving challenges of harsh climate, bleak landscape, few trustworthy relatives during his youth, enemies and competitors who preferred him dead, and a dearth of resources to supply his ambitions and forces. I'm going to bring security into this, so let's look at what our security is. First of all, what are security inputs? The focus is on the individual, and I'm taking Chinghis Khan as my case study. And again, drawing from human security, looking at the security of individuals, the endpoint or the test of security is whether life is maintained, or as I phrase it, to prolong life and postpone death. So that is what we all have as our working definition of security. In looking at questions of life and death, come across some interesting literature such as this, that if we had perfect security, we would have immortality. But we don't, so we work with what we have. But in any event, there has been this quest for immortality. Chinghis Khan himself sought out Taoist divines and wise men and tried to learn the secret of immortality. But of course, like everybody else, he was unsuccessful. So we work with what we have. And I asked at the beginning, which human institutions contributed the most to the security of individuals? The primary guardian of any person is the individual himself, as we take care of ourselves. And secondly, organic society, which consists of family, clan, tribe, other realms of activity which reinforce life. This also includes religion, markets, culture, and customs. Secondary protection comes from the nation state, which are human constructs for the purpose of establishing order. A tertiary construction has been empire, or contemporaneously, world government to bring peace and prosperity to fragmented and conflicting states. In sociology, a social structure refers to the organization of individuals. A political structure is an arrangement of power. And I consider, for my purposes, the individual as the energizing structure of security. Structures have values, that is, they seek values. And what I find in a preliminary kind of way is that individuals all seek longevity. I have the Chinese character for longevity here to show. And states or organic society, which Friedrich Hayek intimated was based on spontaneous action as opposed to civil society, which is organized action or activity. Order is a value of the nation state. If you look at South Korea in 1960-61, threatened by North Korea, very democratic in terms of elections and so forth. And then there was a coup d'etat by Park Chung-hee and the military. Acceptable to most people because it brought political order. And so many societies will tolerate and even welcome authoritarianism if it brings this order. Chinghis Khan himself said that the empire would bring peace, and to a certain extent he was correct. By defeating the opposing tribes or kingdoms or sultanates, he was able to bring a peace, or as Tacitus said, if you knew Chinghis Khan, he would have said that creates a desert and calls it peace. So these are the structures and the values. So what agencies, what instruments were used to achieve these values? Well, an individual works for or longs for longevity. There's this thing that Schopenhauer called a will to live, or Nietzsche's Übermensch, that this will to live overcomes any other kind of emotion. Physical strength, the intelligence, of course, these are factors that go into achieving longevity. Security in organic society achieved through custom, through mutual aid, cooperation. Order achieved by coercion, by law, administration, and the inputs of citizenship. And finally, peace is achieved by war and diplomacy, to eliminate or pacify or assimilate opponents to achieve large dollops of peace. Notice that there's the distinction between singular action and collective action. Again, I'm kind of reinventing human security here. Human security is state-centric. It focuses on what states can do. And I'm asking, well, what can individuals do? There's also an ontological dimension to all this. That is, one of the problems with the study of politics or sociology is that it tends to be more abstract, and the more abstract it gets, the less ontological status it has. Whereas the individual, we know that Chinghis Khan lived. We have verifiable facts. We don't have to depend upon inventing this man or concocting new terms to describe him. And as we move up, the ontological status becomes lower and lower. Okay. I read someplace that economists dominated in the 20th century and demographers will rule in the 21st century. So let's look at some demography here and some of the implications. I'll be coming back to Chinghis Khan in a moment, but I want to set this background. There's been some interesting estimations, but they all look something like this of world population over time. We go back to about 10,000 BC. The population was just a few million, and then over time we get this growth. So, if security means to protect human life, then as a species, humans have been fairly successful, judging from this sort of projection. There have also been some interesting estimates of human life expectancy. And if you were living in the era of 10,000 BC, you could expect to live 20 years, more or less. And after 10,000 years, a little bit more of human security kicked in, 22 years. By the Enlightenment, just before the American Revolution, big jump to 27 years. But the real big jump comes here, up to our own time. And what's interesting is that the life expectancy of Chinghis Khan, or his lifespan, I should say, was 62 years. So in terms of security, in terms of prolonging life, postponing death, he was doing something right, or he created instruments that would reinforce his life expectancy. Human security, I take as multiplying those two charts by multiplying the life expectancy times the population. And what this means is that the unit of security is one year of a human life. So the more of these years that have transpired, the greater the human security. So we have an index. We have a rough index of human security in terms of the number of, I call them hum years, shortened form of human life years. So the more of these human life years that we accumulate, the greater our human security is expressed. Okay, coming back to our protagonist here, Chinghis Khan, how is he able to live to the ripe old age of 62 or 67 or 69, depending on which sources you go with. But I go with Paul Rashevsky's biography, who looks at the major sources, and for him, the best estimate is 1165 for his birth and 1227 for his death, giving him 62. So what I try to do in this graph is to identify the sources of, or the security inputs of Chinghis Khan. So what political enemies is in red. These are people, these are forces that want to see Temujin or Chinghis Khan expire, to meet the great kaput, to have physiological shutdown. But on the other hand, he has all these other things going for him. This blue line is a rough estimate of how secure he was. And these are his years in age, dying at 63. At the beginning, he only had his family and his clan. And even the clan wasn't that helpful, as I noted. And as he increased in age, his security increased. The comitatus, these were key to understanding ancient and medieval Central Asian history. These were bands of brothers. These were men who would band together, fight together to the death. They would protect their leader, even at the expense of their own life. The Anda, the blood brothers, such as Jamuka or Borchu, were also important in keeping him alive, which is really what security is all about. A patron, such as Tongrul or Wang Khan, also was important, providing protection not only for him but also for the Anda and the Comitatus. And of course, as he became more powerful, he made allies. By creating a state at the age of around 43, his kind of tribal militia were transformed into a standing army. And he used the formation of the state as an occasion to reorganize the army, to reorganize the military, to establish his own bodyguard. And so this further strengthened him, further gave him security. He also, within a few years after 1206, commissioned a couple of his followers to consolidate customs into a law, into what was called the Yasa, Y-A-S-A. The Yasa was a legal code based largely upon Mongol customs. So you can't have a state without laws, and this is part of his establishment. And finally, the peace that was really quite evasive, but the peace he was working for was one that would provide prosperity and knowledge. He also implemented a written language for Mongols based on the Uyghur script. so that there would be a higher level of civilization. At the same time, there was this refusal to urbanize. That is, many of the later enemies or conquests of the Mongols lived in cities. And there was no love lost between the urban dwellers and the dwellers in the steppes. The farmers, the agrarians, looked at the nomads and saw uncivilized savages who really bathed, who ate meat and did not have settlements. And the Mongols and the other nomads would look at the people who lived in cities or who farmed for a living as subhuman. That is, these were people who were tied to the soil. They couldn't move when they wanted to. They couldn't ride horses. They were only half human from that standpoint. So there was this vast difference in perception, and also making it easier to mutually demonize each other as well. And then I have the natural and biological environment in green because it's neutral. I mean, a snowstorm on the steppe could easily kill, if not the herdsman, then his flocks, or a major part of his flocks, which would result in impoverishment and starvation. On the other hand, it was the grass, the water, the other elements of the environment that provided for the livelihood and security of the nomad. So the environment is both enemy and friend to the nomads. So we have these inputs. We have increasing inputs into the life of Chinghis Khan. Looking at it from another perspective, he lived a rather perilous life, as I mentioned. And so what I've done is just taken some rough numbers just to compare where the crisis points were and where life was a little bit more peaceful, saying that his chances of being killed at any year his chance was about 40% average, okay? Being born on the steppe is a very dangerous entry because, of course, it may be during a migration, a birthing mother may be attacked, or the tribe, or the clan may be attacked by another tribe at the time. Disease, cleanliness, hygiene was very low, and so the survival rate was not very low. Having survived birth and infancy, things settled down a bit. And then here, when he was about 9 to 11, there was the exile from the clan. They had to live in the forest. They scrounged whatever they could find. They were always hungry. And so the life expectancy at this time was much lower. And then he marries. He becomes a vassal of Togrul. Life becomes better. He has protection. His wife is kidnapped. And he has friends and allies that can help him regain her. And then there are battles through his life, Dalan Baljut, and fighting here, miscellaneous battles and so forth. He's also shot in the neck with an arrow, and one of his companions by the name of Jibe sucks the blood out because poison arrows were used at the time, and probably Chinghis could have died if he didn't have his friend to help him. And there were other times when he was wounded as well. So his life chances, his mortality risk was fairly high and extremely high at certain points. And it was 100% when he was 62. He died when you have 100%, and we all have 100% mortality risk at some point in our life. And so that was the end of it. There's no 0%, because that would indicate immortality. There's this novel, The Tiger's Wife, And in this is there's the deathless man. And no matter what you do to him, he doesn't die. He's an example of a 0% mortality risk kind of guy. Okay. Security inputs into the life of Chinghis Khan. Here again, on this axis, on the vertical axis, I have the years indicating his age. And at a very young age, as an infant and young child, of course, mother is extremely important for nurturing, for drying his tears or whatever. Father becomes increasingly important in finding a bride for him, for teaching him riding and archery and hunting and herding and all the other things necessary to survive on the steppe. And of course, the self, the ego, this will to live, is it's there, but it only increases after tests, after he becomes aware of himself as he matures, and so this is something that grows over time. Organic society, that is the customs, the language, the mutual aid, cooperation, and so forth, is also important in maintaining his survival. And then, with the introduction of the state, his security is enhanced because he has the power to organize resources for his own benefit and for the benefit of his own people. Notice his father dies when he's about 18 in this graph, and that's the end of it. His father is no longer giving any inputs. The mother stays, she gives advice, she helps out, but her input also diminishes. Children, wife, all these are all helpful. But it's the state which becomes a big demarcation in providing security for Chinghis Khan. Now, if this were perfectly precise, what I could do is could draw a line across here, take this, add them together, and compare them to maybe this, a cross section, and get a ratio of how the security, or compare the security situation of Chinghis Khan. There's all kinds of mathematical possibilities here. Okay, running along here, we have the last thing I want to say is about the security theory, my theory of anthrocentric security. What I've done here is to summarize. I've done this in other contexts, but not with a single person. So it's a kind of a mind experiment. The inputs at the individual level I've identified as these: the capacity to survive, the family, knowledge, and the natural environment. So these are the inputs of individuals and of himself to prolong life and postpone death. There are also inputs from organic society. Again, we're just talking about the nomads here. There's a trade-off of liberty. Liberty is diminished as one surrenders one's resources to a society. This is Thomas Hobbes, of course, that we give up our right of self-defense when we become part of the state. That is, the state has the sovereignty to control our own defense. We give that up. That's what that says. Access to socially generated cultural and technical knowledge. It's knowledge that has been responsible for this upward curve in human security over time. Our knowledge of things like metallurgy, medicine, geography, geology, all this kind of knowledge has added to our ability to prolong our lives. Obligation and loyalty to other persons in the social network. The examples of this, of course, were the superior-inferior relationship between Chinghis Khan, between Temujin and Togrul, his friendship, his blood brotherhood with Jamukha, the obligations, the social loyalties of a person like Jibe, who sucked the blood out of his neck, and so forth. So these kinds of obligations and loyalties were crucial to Chinggis Khan, and also in our own society. Social economy, trade, certainly was enhanced by the trust within tribes, or between tribes, within clans, the blood relationships also fostered trade and a division of labor, more and more division of labor. First based on gender, men would go out and fight, or they would go out and herd, the women would stay, take care of the gear, gather food, cook food, and so forth. So there was a very strict division of labor that was the basis of their social economy. And finally, again, just waiting for a mathematical intervention here, that there is some number. There's some number that indicates the intensity of social conflict. Its reverse would be an indicator of social concord. That is, various scholars, at least in the social sciences, have measured social conflict, and it can be quantified. The less social conflict there is, the greater is the proclivity to extend life chances. That is, social conflict is harmful to human life, as we all know. And finally, the state. What does the state do in terms of input? I won't go through these, but there are illustrations all through the biography of Chinggis Khan of all 15 of these inputs. I won't bore you with what these were, but take my word for it, they do exist. To summarize, I've generated 3 formulas of anthrocentric security, and they're just the 15 factors that I've referred to. I take the security of an individual, bring it down here, then add the organic society inputs, which gives me this, and then that comes down here, and so we have the full range of security inputs expressed in a very simple mathematical expression. Finally, or next to finally, the where do I go next with this? Well, working with Chinggis Khan, I've been able to identify 15 primary inputs of security. The output was the longevity, the 62 years or so of his life. But it doesn't stop there. There's this ongoing loop, because Chinggis Khan contributed security inputs to Mongols. By creating the state, he made the lives of Mongol tribesmen more stable, more prosperous. Many Mongols became very prosperous. Many of them frittered this away, borrowing money or buying into enterprises that they knew nothing about. And so the next thing I'd like to do is to identify what are the outputs. That is, what did Chinggis Khan do in particular that would prolong the lives and postpone the deaths of people that associated with him, or people that followed him, or people that lived within the institutions that he established. So that's one direction that questions have to be examined. And the other thing is Asian values. There's, a few years ago there was a debate over what are Asian values and whether or not they exist. And so the next thing I want to do is to determine whether there is a significant difference between Asian values and Western values. It's a very critical question because there's almost the assumption in social sciences that eventually Western society and Asian societies will converge. And we all want the same thing. We all want justice, equality, and liberty. Maybe we do, maybe we don't. But what my examination of anthrocentric security and Chinghis Khan demonstrates is that security, order, and peace are primary. That without these, you can't move to the next stage of justice, equality, and liberty. So this will be a very interesting inquiry as I proceed. So let's end with this photo of a stainless steel statue of Chinghis Khan. This is about 50 kilometers outside of Ulaanbaatar. I was there a few years ago. It just had opened. And you can see the scale of this with people here and some automobiles here. You can climb up. I think there's an elevator. We went up to the top, and there's people up here. It's going to be a big complex. I end with this because Chinghis Khan has become the major icon of identity of contemporary Mongolians. There used to be a Chinghis Khan Holiday Inn. There's Chinghis Khan vodka, Chinghis Khan beer. And he's become a trade name there. But there's also this seriousness that the Mongols today believe themselves to be the direct descendants of Chinghis Khan. It gives them identity. They also have embedded a kind of genetic security in their defense structure, in their legal structure. Make it very hard for people to take up citizenship, non-Mongols to take citizenship in Mongolia. And there's a kind of reference to Chinghis Khan as the purity of the Mongol race. It's not racism, but it's a kind of reactive defensiveness that they don't want to be assimilated, they don't want to be swallowed by the Chinese, nor do they want to become part of Russia as they were during the period of the Soviet Union. Okay, I'll stop here and take a few questions if you so desire.